Welcome back to Arsenal Pass, everyone. It's Hayden here today, and I'm just doing a bit of a quick deck overview of a Blitz deck, actually, that I played in a Skirmish last weekend. So we're coming into the last 2 weeks of the Skirmish Season 3, and, I had the opportunity to go and play a couple of skirmishes. Week 1 of the Skirmish season that I got to play, and I actually went and played Kano, and I also got to play a draft skirmish, which was awesome, by the way. If you haven't checked out those draft skirmishes yet, and you get the opportunity to do so, I highly, highly recommend it. But then the week after, had another skirmish. Didn't really feel like playing Kano. I wanted to play something a little bit different. And, the man himself, Tarek Patel, definitely inspired me to take his list from Classic Constructed and put that into a bit of a Briar Blitz deck list, which is what we've got sitting in front of us here. So myself and 2 others actually ran this deck list. Those 2 played in the final of our skirmish. Unfortunately, I lost in the quarterfinal. But the list did end up taking the skirmish. And I posted the list on Twitter, which some of you might have seen. And it got a lot of reaction in terms of people who were picking it up and playing it that weekend. So because I'm in Australia, time zones ahead, ended up being Friday evening, early Saturday morning that some of the people who ended up playing the list that weekend as well in North America saw the list. So I know as well over the weekend, the list actually won a couple of other skirmishes, top-8'd a few, and even made some finals. So it was really exciting to see. So I thought, you know what, 2 weeks left in the skirmish season, why not just do a quick breakdown of what this deck actually is? Because the main deck isn't really that spicy, to be honest. It really is a simmering down of Tarek's Classic Constructed deck and plays very similarly. But up here in this sort of section of our equipment, that's where we've got some spice going on. It really helps us in some really key matchups in this Blitz format. So I do want to talk about this mostly, but before we get into that, I just want to talk about the list. So down in the description, we do have the current list that I played last weekend. But if I was going to be going to another skirmish this weekend, a Blitz skirmish, there's a few things that I would probably look at changing. So I just wanted to talk about those as well as we go through the cards. So in terms of what this deck is actually doing, if you've seen the Classic Constructed version of the Blitz Lightning deck, you're going to be very familiar with this. If you haven't, we actually have a Classic Constructed deck tech up that Brendan did last week, so you can also check that out. But realistically, what is happening here is we have a mix of attack actions that have Go Again, and a mix of non-attack actions that, some cantrips, some that just draw cards with Plunder Run style. We've got Gorganian Tome, we've got Sonata Arcanics, which can find us another attack. And a mix of just cards like Nimblism and Weave Lightning that boost our current attack actions to give more damage. And then we're combining those with, as I say, a lot of these attack actions that have Go Again, the Ball Lightnings, the Rebels, Lightning Surge from Arsenal, Scar for Scar, E-Strikes, Entwine Lightnings here. And then you've got a few just good 0 for 4 attacks. So we've got the Arcanic Shockwaves, which work really well with our Lightning cards, add that extra damage in, and give you 2 embodiment of Earth tokens, which is, really key in Blitz when honestly, these games are lasting like 2, 3, 4 turns a lot of the time. Snatch, great card, right? Threatens a draw trigger as a breakpoint at 4, and then Exude Confidence, really strong into decks like Old Time and Ira with the Flick Flax, stopping you from being able to play those onto the chain, as well as, maybe if you've paired it with a Plunder Run or something, it's really hard to stop. So these cards are really important. In terms of the attack actions, I wouldn't change anything in this deck currently, what the list looks like. You've got I know the yellow Ravenous Rebels are ones that people look at and go like, do we really want those? The natural Go Again is really important in this deck list. So I definitely wouldn't be touching any of these cards like the yellow Ravenous Rebel. I'd be leaving those. The one option you could play is Arcanic Crackle, especially if you're expecting to see a lot of mirror matches over the weekend, if you think people are going to be playing this deck. And I expect people to be picking this deck up and playing it. It did win, as I say, a few skirmishes, so I think it is a good option for the weekend. So you could play Arcanic Crackle Red. And I guess if you were looking for where you might find space for that, to be honest, I would probably end up cutting like maybe this blue Plunder Run and finding space for 1 Arcanic Crackle. And if you really wanted to play 2, I would probably keep the non-attack actions where they are. So I would definitely keep 1 of the Pulse or Plunder Run. I don't think I would cut both. I might change them for another non-attack action, which we'll talk about shortly. But I would probably keep the ratios pretty similar. I feel like the ratios are pretty good. What I've found with this deck is you actually end up losing to not the quad non-attack action hand, because the ratios are pretty good. Then you've got Sonata Arcanics, which can kind of get you out of that. Gorganian Time does a similar job. What you usually end up, also you have embodiments of Earth, so if you draw an all non-attack action hand, often you can block out with 2 cards, swing the blade, arsenal a card, and get set back up. What is often really bad is when you draw like an Entwine Lightning, an Arcanic Crackle, a Snatch, and Exude Confidence in your hand. You got these 4 attacks that don't have natural Go Again. That can be a real issue, especially in the Kano matchup. So yeah, as I say, I wouldn't cut any of these natural Go Agains. But if you did want to find room for the Arcanic Crackle, 1 of these non-attack actions here, and you could potentially cut maybe, 1 of these Exudes or an Entwine Lightning, but I probably wouldn't go that far as to cut those. In terms of any other cards in the deck, there's a couple other cards that are, maybe like 39th, 40th card, and that's the Pulse of Candlehold and the Blue Plunder Run. So the reason in the end that we ended up running 3 blues was just one of the ways that you lose to Oldtime is basically them going Channel Lake Frigid, hitting a Blizzard on the right turn, and basically just keeping you pegged back so much that eventually they can just tempo and push damage. So if you have 3 blues versus 2, it doesn't sound like much, but when you're going through 4 to 5 turns, all you need to do is find one turn where you have that blue and you can actually push damage and get that tempo back. So the 3rd blue actually made a lot of a difference. And it being a Plunder Run, I mean, Plunder Run is just really strong in this deck when you're able to go so wide. So I had no issue playing the 3rd Plunder Run, the 5th Plunder Run even, the 1 blue Plunder Run. And I think if you're expecting Oldtime and even Ice Lexies in your meta, then I would probably stick with it. You could even potentially play a 4th one, but that does cause some issues with these Rebels. I liked 3, just in terms of ratios. I think that's probably where I'd land. The Stings are untouchable. This card is one of the best cards in the deck. It's going to let you finish in-games with Ball Lightnings or just big turns. I mean, I just had a hand in the skirmish last weekend. I drew 1 Sting, 3 Ball. Very lucky, obviously. That's a lot of damage coming out and very, very difficult for the opponent to deal with. Also gave me a lot of embodiments. So on the back end, when my opponent tried to swing back with an E-Strike, that was a 1-card block. So yeah, really impressive. In terms of, I guess, like anything else in this deck, so yeah, as I say, the Pulse, the Plunder Run, those are cards you could cut. I probably would if I wasn't worried about those Ice Lexi decks, etc. I would take this Plunder Run. I would turn this into a 2nd Red Captain's Call. Red Captain's Call, very, very strong. And I think that's where we had initially talked about. I know Nick, who played the deck as well, Nick Butcher, he was thinking about playing the 2nd Red Captain's Call. I took him around to the blue Plunder Run because we thought there'd be Oldtimes and Ice Lexies. But if you're not worried about that, definitely jam that 2nd Captain's Call in. The Pulse. I really like the Pulse. What can happen is at some point in a game, a longer game against maybe these Oldtimes or a deck that's trying to really defend you out, maybe even a Bravo, you get the Sting pitched at some point in the game. And then into the mid-game, you just pulse 2 balls back on top, and you have this like really strong turn, if not a kill turn, pretty naturally. Also, this is half an embodiment, and also can defend for 4 plus, or it defends for 3 naturally, plus if you have any embodiments of Earth, it's going to get boosted up. But it's half an embodiment of Lightning, and it can get you back 2 of the best, sort of cards in your deck on top of your deck. So 2 Ball Lightnings, an Arcanic Shockwave, or an Entwined Lightning plus a Ball, whatever it might be. That's going to be really powerful. So I really like this card. I probably wouldn't cut it, but I know it could be personal preference if people find that they just don't need this or they're not playing long games. This could go to the Red Captain's Call, maybe keep the blue Plunder Run, maybe bring in Arcanic Crackle. So that would be kind of my advice. Anyway, enough about the main deck. It's pretty straightforward. I want to talk about some of the equipment because that's where some of the decisions come into play. First of all, the weapons. So we've got Rosetta Thorn and Dustblade, 2 of the most powerful weapons that you have in this format right now. I think the ability to have Dustblade available to you in Blitz is really strong, and this is why I think this is a good option. Rosetta Thorn you're playing into any of your shorter games. So the Mirror, you're playing into Ira, you're going to play it into Lexi decks. This Dustblade, that's going to be against Guardians. So Oldtime, Bravo. This just means that it's going to be very, very difficult for them to win. They have to get tempo and actually push the game. That's honestly near impossible for Bravo in my experience. Oldtime can do it, but it's going to require some really good draws from them. And Dustblade through, if you get to the mid game, can really just start to overpower them. Yeah, they might have a Channel Lake Frigid. But once you get through that, you get push damage. The Dustblade's going to take over. You just need to keep your life somewhat high. And on those channel turns, you can just defend out. In terms of our chess pieces, we have the Tunic versus the Aether Ironweave. Aether Ironweave ended up just being played in most of the matchups. Most of your games aren't going for 3+ turns, and realistically for Tunic to be better than Ironweave, often you really want to see 2 counters off it, which is basically never going to happen outside of the games where you can play Duskblade. So Aether Ironweave, I played into most matchups. The one thing I would say against Ira is that if you don't know what your Ira opponent's plan is, you don't know that they're playing these more aggressive decks that have become popular with Ira, I would probably just play the Tunic anyway. But if you know they're on these league tap snatch builds, then I would just jam the Ironweave in there. That would probably be where I go. But Ironweave really overperformed. The ability to actually defend first and then get the resources later is actually really key, especially in the Mirror where you're trying to maybe stop an on-hit effect. 1 card plus a snatch or something. 1 card plus Ironweave, stop a snatch, and then 2 turns down the track you pop it. Is really relevant. That game is not going that long. And then you've got your standard Grasp, Arknight, Snapdragon Scalers. And you're playing those in any matchup that isn't Kano, and I'll explain that in a second. So these 3 plus 1 of your chess pieces plus 1 of your weapons, that's your standard setup. Then Kano. This is where the matchup against Kano felt like, how are we going to win this matchup? Spell Void 4, Crown of Dichotomy. So Spell Void 4 is going to give you the ability to basically, probably what ends up happening is that you use a Spell Void 2, so either the Shock Charmers or the Cloak plus the Leggings, and pitching a card to Crown of Dichotomy to stop 1 sort of attack or 1 spell coming in from Kano, and then you're probably doing it a second time, and the game's probably over. Either you've lost or you've won, to be honest. The game is really quick. If you win the die roll, you 100% want to be going first against Kano. Basically in every matchup, I think you want to be going first with this deck, except for maybe Dorinthia. In fact, I would say definitely go second against Dorinthia. That tempo is really important. You don't want them to get that tempo. Yeah, and then so basically you wanna win the die roll against Kano. You have this Spell Void 4. You're trying to blank, a Sonic Boom or a part of a Fork Lightning, or generally you don't really care about if they just come with a Voltic Bolt for 6. Whatever, take it. That's fine. Where you really want to make sure you're able to prevent their turns is like the Sonic Boom, the Lessons in Lava, the even Aether Spindle. What I'll often do is do the 2+1 with Aether Spindle, and you will have some card. Often you won't be able to play your 4 or 5 card hand because you get multiple non-attack actions. Your Scars don't have go again often in this matchup, so often pitching to that Crown is pretty fine. But the main thing is you just want to keep the pressure on that Kano matchup. That's the biggest thing. So Spell Void 4, Crown makes that matchup really close, as opposed to pretty close to unwinnable, I think, unless they got really unlucky without the Spell Void. In terms of anything else, in terms of matchups, like I said, the Ira matchup feels pretty fine, to be honest. I know we played a lot of Iras in the weekend, felt like a pretty good matchup. The Flick Flacks, they can be annoying in the mid game, but they have to be really aggressive against you. If they are really defensive, you're just going to overwhelm them, get through those Flick Flacks, and your 5-card hands are just, and your 4-card hands are just going to overpower them, which is great. In terms of other matchups, yeah, like I say, old time, that's with Duskblade and your kind of the way you play this main deck, and your you got Tunic as well. The Duskblade, really important there. Other matchups in the format that you're probably going to see, I guess, if you're seeing Ice decks like the Lexi decks, or even Lightning Lexi. Lightning Lexi personally way scarier than the Ice Lexi, just because they can actually trade damage with you and have some relevant cards that can pin you back as well. Mirror, yeah, I think you want to be going first into the mirror match, although it doesn't actually matter that much. It's more about how much value you get out of your non-attack actions with defending, and when you use your equipment, you want to make sure you're only using those for on-hit effects. So equipment management is really important with this deck. But anyway, that's what we've been doing with this Lightning Briar deck and Blitz. It was thrown together pretty quickly, tuned a little bit. Like I say, I'll put the deck list of what I would play this weekend down in the description, changed from last weekend, so both deck lists are there if you want to check it out. And yeah, pick it up, have fun. And if you're not already subscribed to Arsenal Pass, make sure you subscribe and share it with your friends. We are making more videos like this to share, decks that we're playing, decks that we've been testing, and trying to get some of those out there. Usually, if it's a quick turnaround, we'll chuck it up on Twitter, and we might do something like this as well, so you can see the decks that we're playing. But yeah, if you are heading to a skirmish this weekend, good luck, and I think this is a great option.